The Fermi paradox. In short, it's a way to describe the strangeness of having no evidence of extraterrestrial life, even though it seems highly probable given the enormous size of the universe. With an infinite number of suns, each with planets orbiting them, why haven't we encountered any signs of life? No radio signals, no transmissions, no visitors. This existence is too vast for us to be alone. So where is everyone? I wish we had never answered that question. The first person to make contact with extraterrestrial life was Calvin Myers. Born blind, Calvin was the first patient to receive a prosthetic eye, a medical miracle. But from the moment his new eyes opened, Calvin began to scream. He had to be sedated. It took several hours before he was calm enough to tell the doctors what had happened. It turned out Calvin had seen demons, monsters, sharp, distorted creatures crammed into the corners of his room. He saw deformed images gliding through mirrors, darkness shimmering, evil faces staring down from the ceiling. Calvin gouged the plastic eyes out of his sockets. "The darkness is better," he told the doctors. A full report was sent to Agency X. There was no serious discussion about stopping the project. Too much money had been invested, market goals had been set, and management had their expectations. So more devices were manufactured, distributed, and tested, and each time the result was the same. As soon as the test subjects opened their new eyes, they witnessed a world teeming with horrors. I will never forget what I saw when the doctors removed my bandages. Eyes stared back at me. They were huge, the size of truck tires, blue and bloodshot, attached directly to my wall. I could feel that these eyes recognized me. Worse, they hated me. The room was filled with other abominations. A hairy demon with the face of a child, a woman made of thorns and red light, a pile of coiled limbs, each gnarled hand slowly opening and closing. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I passed out. When I woke up, the first thing I did was try to gouge my eyes out. But the doctors had learned their lesson from Calvin. I was tightly bound, monitored, forced to see. Every day was a parade of nightmares. Darkness melted and spilled like an ink blot on the ceiling, dripping onto my chest. I couldn't feel them fall, but I saw them pool into vicious faces, staring at my new, fancy eyes. Everything was worse at night. I begged the doctors to leave the lights on. If I had to see the monsters, at least I wanted to see them clearly. But my requests were denied. Horrible shapes danced down the hallway outside my room. Something crawled onto my bed, breathing heavily, then leapt out the window. The doctors recorded all my ramblings. They injected me with experimental drugs, but didn't believe my words. Occasionally, I heard screams echoing from the end of the hall. When my door was open, I knew I wasn't the only one in the hospital with new eyes. Others could see too. After almost a month, they finally released me. I had lied to them the week before, telling them I no longer saw the creatures. So I was set free, given medication, and a diary. "Call us if you see anything unusual," they told me. They had no idea. On the bus ride home, I saw 3 goat heads with swollen bellies as tall as maple trees running alongside the highway. A rotting whale floated above us, its white entrails spilling out like spoiled milk. It ate the clouds as it passed, and when it hit the sunlight, I could see right through it, every bone and vein. I thought about gouging my own eyes out, pulling them from my skull like jelly from a jar. But I was afraid, not just of the pain, but that the creatures would still be out there, maybe not seeing them, but knowing they were watching me would be even worse. You haven't heard about these eyes, I'm sure of it. Agency X won't let the information leak until they are ready. I am breaking every security agreement in the world by posting my story online. But you need to know, because now that some of us have seen the invisible monsters, they are becoming bolder. I feel them now. At night, they touch my neck lightly or slap at me. Some give small bites, testing, probing. It's only a matter of time before they reveal themselves. I'm not sure what we can do to protect ourselves, or if we even can, but knowing is the first step. So believe me when I tell you, wherever you are reading this, if you think you are alone, you are never alone. You can't see them, but they are very aware of you. Hold still. Don't tremble. Try not to panic. I've spent every night sleeping in the bathtub with all the lights in the house on. The fear paralyzes me like a chain around my neck, keeping me from leaving the house. But I'm tired of being afraid, tired of being alone. You may not have my eyes, but I think you can see them. If you look closely, concentrate, use your peripheral vision, watch mirrors carefully for movement. Maybe you'll see something, or maybe something will appear if it thinks you are looking. As I said, they are getting bolder. Someone is following me. Every time I leave the apartment, my new eyes are sensitive to small details. I always see the same car driving slowly around my area. It always follows me, a few cars behind. I've also noticed other things watching me. Faces in reflections, giant silhouettes in the clouds. Sometimes, while on the bus, I'll notice a face on the street whose features are all in the wrong order. I don't go out at night anymore. Some of you had questions after my last update. I'll try to answer. If you're wondering why I mentioned the Fermi paradox, I was just sharing a theory from a friend. There's a whole group of us online, all former Agency X guinea pigs with shiny new eyes and fresh nightmares. I don't know their real names, just their nicknames. Ribbon and Violet, Calico and Cheshire, Dublin and Burrow, and Matilda. There are many others, but those are the 7 I talk to most, almost every day. We share what we see, comfort each other after sleepless nights, and most of all, we speculate. If you're wondering what my name is, you'll have to keep wondering. You can call me Walt, if that helps. Cheshire was the one who mentioned the Fermi paradox. They believe the horrors we see are disguised aliens, and our artificial eyes can see through their camouflage. Matilda has a different theory. The creatures we are observing come from another dimension, and that dimension is overlapping with our world. Are those entities hostile, friendly, or indifferent? Boro posted in the chat room one rainy afternoon. That day I was struggling with a hangover. To be honest, most days are like that since the surgery. The rain was drizzling outside my bedroom window. It had been 3 months, and my life was hanging in uncertainty. I'd quit my job, too afraid of what I might see if I looked too closely at my colleagues. Agency X provided me with a stipend for my services, enough to get by, but it was quickly running out. Boro's question echoed in my head. Before I could answer, I saw Violet typing. They seem hostile. A few days ago, I was out buying groceries. I almost got to the checkout when I noticed an old woman standing in the fruit section. Her face was pouring blood from her eyes, nose, mouth, maybe even her pores. I stood frozen. She noticed me, then started making cooing sounds, as if trying to lure me closer. I dropped everything and ran out of the store. They seem hostile, but do we know for sure? I wondered. There was a knock at my door. A pause, then scraping. I tried to ignore it. Now that I can see these creatures, there's a connection. I hear them all the time, small laughs or sighs. Sometimes I can even feel them. One creature, seemingly made entirely of fog and teeth, even took a small bite out of my shoulder. I call that a hostile act, although maybe it was just hungry or curious. The scraping turned into pounding, then silence. Matilda was typing. I think they might be like us, some good, some bad, some just ugly. Dublin, who only communicates in emoji, added a smiley face followed by LOLs. The smoker has blunt teeth, Ribbon posted, but his tongue is sharp as a razor. Are you okay? All caps. I saw the girl in the mirror, or the mirror in the girl. Something awful. Ribbon, are you okay? Boro asked. We asked each other that often. Are you okay? A polite way of asking if the small mental cracks we all felt were starting to break wide open. Ribbon was typing again. "They said you're next after me, Walt." I felt my stomach drop to the floor. My apartment was hot, but I started to shiver. Ribbon left the chat. The others took 10 minutes to convince me that everything was fine, that Ribbon was just agitated. I lied and said I wasn't worried. "Are you okay, Walt?" Matilda messaged me privately. "Stay strong and contact me whenever you need to talk." "Thanks," I said. I logged out and closed the laptop. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, tapping on the window as if a guest was demanding to be let in. The TV was hissing softly on the wall. I glanced up and saw it was an old show I'd seen dozens of times. Only this time I saw the comedian had a second mouth on his neck, his head flopping up and down every time he told a joke. That was the closest I ever came to gouging my eyes out. My fingers stopped as I pressed down on my eyelids. "Damn it, damn it, damn it," I said. With nothing else to do, I turned off the TV, took a shower, and didn't leave the apartment for the next week. A new message. I was lying on the sofa in the flannel pajamas I'd been living in for 2 days when I got the notification. My apartment, which was never at risk of being mistaken for a palace, was now a mess of pizza boxes and empty beer cans. I had set up temporary alarms on the doors and windows by tying up some of the loudest bottles I could find. The alert was an email from Cheshire. This wasn't the first time they had sent one, but it always made me nervous. I once asked them where they found my email address, but got no answer. Usually Cheshire would send me weird pictures, a house, a hospital, a tree with light emanating from it. This time was different. For the first time, Cheshire used words. "Are you there, Walt? I need your help. They found me. Can you call me? Call as soon as you can, but do not use your personal phone." The email ended with a phone number. I stared at the screen for a long time, the screen glowing in my dark living room. The blinds were closed, and my sense of time was slipping, but I knew it was past midnight. For a moment, I thought about deleting the email, closing the laptop, and throwing it out the window. I didn't want to get involved, but Cheshire sounded desperate, and after all, our weird little group was the closest thing to family I had left. A bunch of lab rats with machine eyes who could see monsters. Maybe we were friends. We were something, even if we only existed online. Do not use your personal phone. Just a few blocks away, there was a gas station with the last payphone in Baltimore. Maybe the last one in the world. Realistically, there were probably others, but it was the only one I knew. And it was just a block away, at night. Every sense in me wanted to wait until morning, but Cheshire had said they needed help immediately. A small part of my primal mind warned, what if it's a trap? That's paranoia, I said aloud, standing up, finding street clothes that were almost clean. Cheshire was a friend, mostly. And after all, other than the fog bite and the tall, thin shadow that slapped me, no creature had actually tried to hurt me. Maybe they weren't hostile. I chugged a Red Bull from a previous Uber Eats order before opening the front door. The hallway outside was dark. No sign of movement or life. I went to the elevator, hesitated, then took the stairs down. Baltimore was still awake, but full of anxiety. The city never really shuts down. There are always car lights, garbage. It's not pretty, not always. But after so many years in the dark when I was sick, being able to see this beautiful mess again always gave me goosebumps. I looked at the skyline, trying to memorize the rhythm of the tall buildings casting shadows on the cloudy night sky. Okay, I told myself, taking a breath of the smoky air. Okay. Every shadow under a streetlight made me jump. Every distant car horn made me flinch. But I kept moving, my sneakers chewing up the pavement, taking me closer to the gas station, to the payphone, to a friend. Can I get a light? I almost peed my pants. I let out a yelp and spun around, seeing a man leaning against a nearby wall, just outside the streetlight's glow. His face was obscured by a cloud of smoke. His voice was hoarse, like that of a lifelong heavy smoker. I don't smoke, I stammered. Too bad, the man grumbled, stepping into the light. As he did, his arms, legs, and neck elongated, becoming as thin as steel wire. His body twisted, cracked, and boiled, then collapsed in on itself as he stepped out of the light. Now he was close. He smelled of cigarettes and gunpowder. I couldn't see his face, only the cloud of smoke. It moved with him like a shroud. "Those eyes don't belong to you," he said. "Give them to me." I ran. Other shapes began to emerge from the shadows. I tried to stay in the light as much as possible, running from one streetlight to the next. A giant figure with a bloated body and many thin legs ran up the side of a skyscraper. As I ran past a store, I saw the face of a beautiful, angry woman reflected back at me. Her eyes shone brightly, and I realized they were mirrors, catching and reflecting the light. She screamed, and the glass shattered. But I was already half a block away. I burst into my apartment like a hurricane. Once the door was locked, I slid to the floor, shaking. The adrenaline shock made me sick. I vomited what was left in my stomach. It wasn't until dawn burned behind the blinds that I gradually came back to my senses. A new message. I had left my phone on the table when I went out. A new alert appeared on the screen. I opened the laptop and saw a new email from Cheshire. "We regret to inform you that you're being hunted." The sentence ended with a winking face emoji. I was trapped in my apartment. Every night was the same. Knocks, scrapes, screams, and a silence so profound it couldn't be natural in a city. A few evenings I saw smoke leaking into the living room from under the front door, but I never saw fire. I had to cover all the mirrors because the face in them was becoming clearer. "Is anyone there?" I typed, huddled in the empty bathtub with the laptop. It had been almost a week since my failed trip to the gas station, a week since Cheshire's warning, or threat, that I was being hunted. Every day another member of our chat group, which I'd started calling the Blindside Blues, disappeared. First Ribbon, then Barrow, next Dublin, Violet, and finally Calico. Now it was just me, Matilda, and Cheshire. Cheshire's responses were not helpful. Matilda's private message arrived 10 minutes later. "I know you're in Baltimore. Can we meet?" Something was scratching at the bathtub drain. I leaned down, then scrambled out of the tub when I saw a green eye with dozens of pupils looking through the hole. If my bathroom was compromised, I had no good options left. I decided it was best to die comfortably, so I curled up on my bed with a soft blanket and a glass of dark rum. "How do you know where I am?" I wrote back, worried, but also slightly comforted. If she was a friend, I had someone on my side. If not, at least maybe this nightmare would end quickly. "Your IP address. You should really invest in a VPN," she replied. "What kind of cable TV channel is a VPN?" I asked. A long pause. "Tilda, are you still there?" "Yes, sorry, I was about to write something sarcastic, then decided against it. Can we meet? I'm in the city." A chill ran down my neck. I thought for a moment, then sent Matilda the name of a restaurant and a time to meet in the morning. Friend or foe, I would face her soon, but first, I had to survive the night. I closed the laptop and prepared for the new ritual at sunset. First step, salt. I went through every door and window in the apartment, laying a thin line of salt on the ground. I even salted around the closet doors. Next, sage and incense. I splashed holy water on the windows. Dream catchers and crosses were hung on the walls. You can find almost anything in Baltimore if you know where to look. It turns out there were 2 occult shops and an apothecary within a short daytime run from where I lived. Feeling as protected as a pinwheel field in a hurricane, I retreated to the bedroom and drank until I fell asleep. For the past 2 days, I had been plagued by migraines, a problem I never had before the new eyes. Not long after the headache started, I also noticed strange dry patches of skin on my arms and legs. They weren't just dry, they were hard and cold to the touch, like something mixed between metal and crystal. Once I vomited a handful of teeth, but after a frantic check, I found none were missing from my mouth. Something was changing in me. With no mirrors to check, I couldn't be sure, but even my face felt different, sharper, younger. The night before meeting Matilda was the worst I had ever experienced. A horrible smell flooded in around 10 p.m., a mixture of cinnamon, dust, and the smell of a portable toilet at a summer music festival. My bed began to sway gently around midnight, then more violently. Less than a minute later, it stopped, and I sprang out of my curled position. Cracks formed on the ceiling above my bed, opening and closing like gills. Hot, bitter wind blew down from the cracks, followed by a strong pulling sensation as the air was sucked back up. The holes narrowed and split into a web of intersecting red lines. I saw faces in them, including my own frightened face reflected back by a pair of mirrored eyes. I squeezed my eyes shut. Please stop. Please just go. Look! A voice shouted in my ear. Its mouth was so close I could feel its cold breath on my cheek. I didn't open my eyes. Eventually, I must have slept. Everything was very hazy. The next feeling I recognized was a sound from outside the window. Someone was whistling. I finally opened my eyes. My bedroom was back to normal. The window was covered by both blinds and curtains. The whistling sounded pleasant, friendly, a tune I didn't recognize. I had a strong curiosity to know who was making it. My hand was already on the curtain before I realized and stopped. I stood by the window for several minutes, unable to pull myself away. The whistling grew fainter. The whistler had moved on. When the night returned to silence, or at least as quiet as Baltimore gets, I fell to the floor. I was breathing as if I had just run stairs. Somehow I dragged myself to the corner of the room, farthest from the window. Then I passed out. Pale yellow light leaking through the closed blinds woke me. Daylight. I'm safe. A long night left me sore and cramped. I stood up, stretching my back, one hand pressed against the wall to keep my balance. When I tried to twist the other way, I discovered my hand was stuck to the wall. Not just stuck, but merged. It was hard to tell where the wall began and my flesh ended. I struggled, pulling, trying to get free. I braced my feet against the wall to save myself. And my feet got stuck too. Wherever my skin touched, I was sucked into the surface. It pulled me in until I was completely submerged inside the wall. The feeling of being trapped almost made my mind explode. I was only held for a TTY. I asked. Matilda sighed and took a sip of her coffee. We sat in silence for a moment while she chewed her lip. Suddenly, Matilda leaned in. "Don't panic," she said, taking off her sunglasses. I panicked, lurching back. "Shh, calm down," Matilda said, glancing around with empty eye sockets to make sure no one had noticed my scream. "Your eyes. You don't have eyes," I stammered. "You're very observant." I focused on my breathing until I felt like a rabbit that had just eaten a lip cherry bomb. "What happened?" I asked. Matilda put her glasses back on. "I gouged them out last week, tried to give them back to whatever wanted them." "Oh, did it work?" "They took the eyes, but I still see the creatures. I still see everything. I think the eyes, they were like seeds. Does that make sense? They planted those damned eyes in our skulls, and something took root. Other parts of me are changing. Last night I started floating for almost 10 seconds. Are you seeing anything weird?" "Yes," I replied quickly. "That bad, huh?" she sighed. I drained the rest of my coffee. "You don't want to talk about it. Whatever is happening, I think it's just you and me left. Cheshire is sending me cryptic emails, pictures of weird things. Everyone else is gone. I have a place to go and a plan, but I'm scared to death to do it alone. Are you in?" I looked out the window. There was a hornet's nest the size of a Ford Fiesta hanging from the traffic light across the street. The nest was pink and wet. Hornets flew out of it, each with hundreds of wings, each hornet the size of a seagull. "Sure," I said to Matilda. "I guess I'm in." Matilda's plan involved an RV, a long road trip, and possibly an assassination. Or maybe an interrogation, she assured me. "You mean torture?" "Sounds like torture," Matilda grinned. "It's only torture if Cheshire doesn't talk. And if they don't, we'll make them talk." This wasn't how I imagined my life would go, but at least now I wasn't alone. I focused on the road and told myself not to piss off Matilda. We were driving west on the highway, heading for California. West, where Cheshire was, and maybe some answers. Around us, spring was waking up. The RV was an old Winnebago, patched up, with wine-colored stripes on the side. The old engine grumbled when I hit the gas. It seemed to treat the accelerator as a suggestion, not a command. We struggled to keep the speed limit. Matilda had her feet up on the dashboard, window open, coffee cup in hand. She still wore her sunglasses, even though I promised her missing eyes didn't bother me. "You really think Cheshire will be that easy to find?" I asked. "We have his IP address, and I was born with the ability to smell like a bloodhound, honey," Matilda said, putting a small hand out the window. "I can't believe both you idiots forgot to use a VPN or hide your signal." "Sorry, I didn't realize I was living in an episode of Get Smart." "Get what?" she asked. "The man from U.N.C.L.?" I replied. "You know, Mission Impossible," I clarified. "Oh, that I know." We drove all day, taking turns at the wheel every 2 hours. The RV had its own toilet, kitchen, and even a shower. It was actually a pretty comfortable way to travel. Twice during the day, Matilda signaled for an emergency stop. She ran out of the Winnebago, into the bushes by the highway, and I heard her vomiting. Matilda said she was fine, but she looked pale. Like me, her skin was showing strange dry patches, shiny like old dull coins. Her neck was also flushed red on both sides. The sun was setting, staining the sky a gradual purple as we started looking for a place to park for the night. We passed a massive accident. Dozens of cars were piled up. Ambulances, fire trucks, and police swarmed, lighting up the evening with red and blue lights. A truck had crossed the median and overturned on the grass. There must have been a terrible fire, because the vehicle was nothing but a charred, twisted black frame. I saw paramedics lift a sheet-covered gurney into an ambulance, and standing above the entire scene was a star-dusted shadow, almost as tall as the treetops. Galaxies swirled around the creature's absolute darkness. Constellations drifted like leaves on a pond. The entity turned toward me and tilted his head curiously. I felt a deep, profound chill. There was a pull. "God, watch the road!" I jumped and looked back at the road. Horns blared. The RV had drifted halfway into the adjacent lane. Sorry, I said, correcting the steering. "What the hell was that, man?" Matilda asked. I thought I saw... I glanced back at the accident, fading in the rearview mirror. No star shadow loomed over the wreck. Nothing at all. A few hours later, as the sun set, we pulled into a rest stop. Matilda guided the RV into a vacant spot in the gravel lot under one of the few streetlights. Surrounding us were a cluster of trees and a picnic table. Across the lot were the restrooms and some vending machines. We grabbed some snacks and went to bed. Matilda slept in the back room, and I took the pull-out couch. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. The darkness from the outside lights filtered through the blinds, casting long streaks across the kitchen. There was a small TV, but I didn't want to wake Matilda. I had just begun to doze off when I heard the whistling outside the Winnebago. My heart nearly pounded out of my chest. The sound grew louder, peaking right at the window above my bed, then fading as the whistler walked past us. I lay still, holding my breath, until the whistling disappeared. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. On the second day of the trip, Matilda told me more about her plan. She said, "When we get there, you hold Cheshire down while I punch him a few times just so he knows we're serious. Then we ask him about the cryptic emails and make him tell us everything about the eyes and the creatures. What if he doesn't know any more than we do? Or what if the beating doesn't work?" Matilda cracked her small knuckles. "Oh, the beating always works." She looked at me with a cold expression, then stuck out her tongue. I winked and turned on the radio. It was a perfect, beautiful day for driving. The sun flooded the road. We had the heater on to combat the morning chill, but there was a touch of warmth in the wind, suggesting the cold was temporary. I tried to focus on that, rather than Matilda's worrying condition. Overnight, the red patches on her neck had turned yellowish purple. Thin scars ran parallel to each bruise. I also noticed Matilda was hiding her right hand, keeping it in her jacket pocket, or hanging it out the window. Her condition was concerning, although mine wasn't much better. I caught a glimpse of my face in the mirror. The metallic spots I had seen before were fading, but now the veins on my neck and cheeks were visibly dark. Small scratches appeared around my eyes, making me look like someone who had been rolling in thorn bushes. I felt dizzy and my joints ached. As we stopped at a fast food joint for breakfast, I prayed that we would find Cheshire and that he would have answers. Clouds began to roll in around noon. At first they were fluffy white clouds, but they quickly turned dark, and the beautiful day I had anticipated grew dreary. Rain lashed against the windshield, faster than the old RV's wipers could handle. We rattled and clanked with every gust of wind. After an hour, it was clear we were risking our lives, so Matilda found an exit leading to a deserted shopping center. We parked the RV and spent the rest of the day sitting on the narrow sofa, watching horror movies. I woke up after dark. The rain was murmuring on the window, and the warmth of the Winnebago must have lulled me to sleep. I felt something pressing against my shoulder. It turned out Matilda had fallen asleep, huddled against me. Outside, the world was illuminated by endless rows of fluorescent lights in the parking lot. Further away, the sky was pitch black, clouds obscuring every star. Matilda's sunglasses had slipped off as she slept. Although she had no eyes, her face was sharp, beautiful, and captivating. I tried to wake her, but she murmured and reached out a hand. It took me a moment to realize she wanted to be carried. When I figured it out, I smiled. I carried her into the bedroom, took off her shoes, tucked her in, and quietly left. Returning to the sofa, I closed the door. I was still smiling when I drifted back to sleep. The smell of smoke woke me instantly. My first thought was fire. Then I saw the figure sitting on the edge of the couch, so close that my feet nearly touched him. "You don't look so good," the smoker rasped. In the dim light, I saw he was wearing a wrinkled, stained suit, his shirt undone and no tie. The cloud of smoke still hovered over his face, obscuring the features, but I thought I could see the shape of a hat through the haze. "Am I dreaming?" I asked. The smoker grabbed my foot. I cried out. He pulled my foot towards his face. I heard his teeth click and began to struggle. The smoker let go of my foot and I shot up. "Do you feel it?" he asked. I stood there, shivering, fists raised. "Then you're not dreaming. Sit down." An invisible force slammed into my shoulder. I fell to the floor, then pulled myself into a sitting position. The smoker sighed, exhaling a plume of smoke. "I warned you about the eyes, offered to take them away for you, but it's too late now. The seed has been sown and you're about to bloom. Can you feel it?" My face felt tight. I reached up and touched my cheek. The veins there were hard and cold as stone, stretched taut beneath the skin. "What's happening?" I whispered. "The change. It's customary," the smoker replied. Matilda screamed from the bedroom. I tried to stand, but was struck down again by the invisible pressure. The smoker stood over me. Then he vanished, and I could move. I ran to the bedroom door. It was locked. Matilda screamed again, and I heard whispering. "Damn it, I'm sick of these parlor tricks," I said. I kicked the door twice, hard enough to break the cheap lock. The room was dark and empty, except for Matilda. She was huddled near the headboard, one arm raised to cover her face. "Tilda, where is it?" She slowly lowered her arm. "It's gone, I think. There was a girl. Her eyes, Walt, they were awful. She bit me. She bit me." I could see a circle of blood just below Matilda's wrist, the small teeth marks visible. "Why, Matilda? What did we do?" All I could do was shake my head. "Will you stay here tonight?" "Mm-hmm. Don't get any ideas, Walt. I'll just feel better if you sleep here. Okay?" "Okay." I climbed into the bed, then immediately jumped out when Matilda asked me to turn on the lights. Finally settled, Matilda took my hand and snuggled into them. We lay like that until the pigeons outside signaled dawn. Matilda was sick. She tried to hide it, but the further we drove, the clearer it became that she was deteriorating. Small cracks kept appearing on her skin. They were thin like scratches, and beneath them something reflected the light. The fingers on her right hand were fusing together, and the lines on her neck had widened, turning purplish red. Several times that week I saw Tilda sit down, looking out of breath or dizzy. I wasn't much better. The black veins had spread all over my body, hardening until I could feel them when I pressed on my arms or legs. They were like thick steel cables running through muscle and bone. Gritty gray membranes also began to appear all over me, and my limbs were so stiff in the morning that sometimes Tilda had to pull me out of bed. We had started sleeping together in the RV's single room after the night we met the smoker and the girl with the mirror eyes. So, all things considered, the trip wasn't entirely bad. This wasn't how I envisioned my life would go, but at least now Matilda and I were hopefully closer to finding answers. "Do you want to stop and see the world's third largest ball of yarn?" Tilda asked. She was in the passenger seat, feet up on the dashboard, window open as usual. We were somewhere in the Midwest, more than halfway to California. Fields stretched around us, flat, green, and endless. The sky looked like it could spawn a tornado at any moment, but there was no rain. I was driving, tapping my rhythm to the song on the radio. At that moment, the monsters seemed distant, and Tilda, with her sunglasses and fleeting smile, was intimately close. I opened my mouth to reply, then felt my stomach clench like a frightened armadillo. "I have to stop," I mumbled, pulling the RV to the side of the road. Luckily, we were the only car on the two-lane road. I barely made it to the restroom before a stream of neon blue liquid shot out of my mouth. "Are you okay, Walt?" She knocked on the door. "Fine, I'm fine," I lied. "But maybe we should save the ball of yarn for the trip back." We kept driving all afternoon. Matilda and I didn't talk about the strange things we saw on the road, but I sensed things were getting worse for her, and I knew it was happening to me too. A few nights I looked up at the sky and saw alien stars in impossible shapes. Once I woke up and saw what looked like the aurora borealis outside, except the bands of color were entirely red. Something enormous swam through the light, a gigantic black silhouette the size of an aircraft carrier, covered in dangling tentacles. One of them brushed the top of the RV, shaking the vehicle. I pressed myself down onto the bed, holding my breath. Matilda stirred slightly beside me, but didn't wake. Most of our encounters with the creatures were like that. Slight bumps, distant meetings, strange things observed from afar. Most entities ignored us. Perhaps they didn't even notice us. A few times creatures came close, or at least followed us, usually with too many eyes. I always felt curiosity from those encounters, but only once did I feel truly threatened. The day after skipping the ball of yarn, Matilda and I were eating lunch at a rest stop, discussing our attack plan for when we finally found Cheshire. "If you hold him, I can hit him until he tells us how to reverse this mess," Tilda said. I nibbled on a sandwich that I could no longer taste. "I just feel like we should take a subtler approach. I want you to hold Cheshire while I hit him. We don't even know if Cheshire is male or female. We know nothing about them. They might not even be human." Tilda sliced an apple. "Stop. What if Cheshire is a cat? Or like a whole bunch of cats working together?" "I hope not." The rest of my sentence died on my lips. The picnic area was surrounded by fields, a green ditch separated by the highway on one side and a dense forest on the other. Standing just outside the edge of the forest was a tall figure with a long, thin neck. From that distance, at least 200 meters, it was hard to tell for sure, but the creature seemed at least 3.5 meters tall. It stood still, facing us, its head drooping, turning the upper part of its body into a question mark. Maybe it couldn't lift its own head. There was something about this creature that reminded me of the time I walked into my garage and heard the hiss. That was only a few months after I lost my sight. The world was pitch black and every sound stood out. I don't know what kind of animal made that sound, but I backed out of the garage and slammed the door shut. There was danger in that sound, a feeling of unease coiling up. I had a similar feeling looking at the tall figure at the edge of the field. "RV," I whispered to Matilda. She turned her head to look in the direction I pointed and froze when she saw the creature. Tilda even took off her sunglasses to get a better look with her empty sockets. Softhead, the clever name I had come up with for the monster, began to lurch toward us through the tall grass. "RV!" I shouted, jumping up. Matilda was immediately right behind me, diving into the passenger seat. In a moment of panic, I couldn't find the keys. Softhead was moving faster now, running across the field, its head bobbing like a ball on a string. It was clumsy but very fast. That's when my brain started working and I lowered the sun visor. The keys fell into my lap. Softhead was almost halfway from the trees to the RV before I finally started the engine. We peeled out of the parking lot so fast I worried the car might flip. But then we were on the highway, accelerating, and I felt every muscle in my body slowly relax. Softhead lunged out from behind us, leaping onto the road. "Damn it, damn it, damn it," I said, flooring the gas pedal. The monster looked ridiculous as it ran, arms spinning and its neck wobbling, but God, it was fast. We didn't truly lose it until the old Winnebago was chugging along at 80 kilometers an hour. We drove in silence for a long time. "I think we should limit our stops," Matilda said. "Yeah," I replied. We reached the state border that night. While looking for an exit to stop at a rest area or parking lot, Matilda suddenly sat up. "Look," she said, pointing around a bend in the hill ahead. "Do you see it?" I turned to where she pointed. I saw a tree taller than any building I had ever seen, reaching high above the horizon. The sunset illuminated its silhouette from below, casting a long shadow over the forest. Blue lights floated around the trunk, moving back and forth in wide circles. The sight was spectacular, beautiful, and seemed very deliberate, as if we were being called in that direction. "Tilda," I whispered, "let's get closer." I wanted to, too. I really wanted to. There was something about the dancing lights and the scale of the tree that pulled me in. I felt drawn to it. A car horn startled me. We had drifted into the next lane, blocking a car. I swerved back into the correct lane and slammed on the gas. "Maybe we'll check it out on the way back, like the ball of yarn." "But Walt," she said. No, we can't. Something's wrong," I replied. "Oh, are you sure?" She frowned, worried. "Sure." Tilda looked out the window toward the tree until it was completely dark. The shadows and distance obscured the shape, but the blue lights were visible for almost an hour, floating, beckoning us. We crossed the border into California just before midnight and decided to drive until we reached the coast, where Tilda hoped to find Cheshire. She was tracking his online activity, sitting at the small dining room table in the RV with my laptop. "Is this really going to take us right to Cheshire's house? I mean, right to their door?" "Probably not. The IP address only gives us a general area, but we'll probably have to circle the neighborhood for a few days to find a sign." I saw Tilda in the mirror scratching her neck. The strange scars on her neck were beginning to bleed. She saw me looking. Her sunglasses hovered in the mirror for a moment, then she grabbed the laptop and went into the bedroom. It didn't take us long to find Cheshire's house. Tilda guided me through a series of turns until we reached a sparsely populated neighborhood. The houses were far apart, with large yards, rusty cars on blocks, and stray cats. There was no mistaking which house was Cheshire's. A storm was swirling over a single house at the end of the road. I slowly drove the RV closer, then parked a few houses away. There was something wrong with the storm. The gray clouds twitched and stumbled against a clear blue sky. Rain was falling, but as I looked closely, I realized the rain wasn't actually falling. It was flying up from the ground, like iron filings drawn by a magnet. An indigo bolt of lightning also originated from the yard and crawled up into the sky. It moved slowly, like an attacking snake in a flip book. The house was hard to see through the flying rain curtain, but it looked old, huge, and full of longing. Tilda and I sat in the RV, surrounded by a beautiful spring day, watching a small storm press down on the house. "Do we knock?" I asked. "Just say hello? Or should we sneak around and, lurk?" Matilda didn't answer. I turned back and saw her staring at me. Her sunglasses were off, her empty eyes fixed on mine. Her neck was bleeding again, pale red drops staining her collar. She breathed with a slight wheeze with every intake of breath. "I'm scared," she said. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "Me too." It was a strange sensation walking through the rain that was rising from the ground. Matilda and I had argued about driving away and waiting until morning to confront Cheshire, but after about an hour, Tilda simply stood up and walked out of the RV. I followed. We quickly crossed the yard in the reverse storm. The water was ice cold and had the consistency of motor oil. Tilda hesitated when we reached the porch. "This isn't how I imagined things would end when it all started. At least we found Cheshire." "Should we knock?" she asked, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. The cuts on her neck were bleeding again. "I can kick the door in," I lied. My legs were stiff, my muscles like jelly with cement running in the veins. The gentle thunder above us intensified into a roar. Another lightning bolt slowly rose from the ground toward the clouds. Matilda reached out and grabbed the doorknob. It wasn't locked. "Screw it," she said, stepping inside. It was like stepping into a drug-induced nightmare. Nothing in the house was straight. The floor was slanted, the walls uneven. The few pieces of furniture I could see were mismatched, broken, and almost seemed hostile. The living room had two winding staircases that disappeared into the ceiling. On the wooden floor was a rug made from a bear skin, but the bear's head had been replaced with a filthy blonde wig. I knelt down to touch the hair and instantly recoiled. It wasn't a wig. "We shouldn't be here," I said, turning back toward the door. The door was gone. Only a blank, dirty wall remained. Matilda made a sound like a cough or a laugh. "I guess we have to keep going." We continued. The narrow hallways stretched much further than they should have, filled with blind corners, sudden turns, and occasionally ending in dead ends. Some hallways were dimly lit. Others were so bright I had to squint and cover my eyes. They kept winding. I think we walked for over an hour. Tilda was breathing heavily the whole time, panting and stopping every few minutes. I wasn't much better. Every step felt like concrete blocks tied to my feet. One of the hallways was lined with paintings. I tried not to look at them too closely. There were portraits with blurred faces, a landscape under a night sky with a single red star that looked like bleeding paint. Halfway down the hall, Tilda stopped. "What is that?" I was about to ask, then I saw it. It was an oil painting of Tilda and me, nailed to the side of the RV, our limbs pinned to the metal. Both our faces were contorted with absolute pleasure. We were laughing so hard our jaws dropped to our chests. "Let's speed up a bit," Tilda said, turning me around. I took a deep breath to calm myself, but made the mistake of looking at the painting again and felt my stomach clench. Matilda waited while I tried to compose myself. We finally reached a door. The doorknob was brass and warm to the touch. I noticed a buzzing sound coming from beyond, almost a hum. "What if Cheshire is in there?" I asked. "I don't know, Walt. I don't know what to do anymore." Tilda reached out and grabbed the handle. "We'll just let things play out." The room was huge, uncomfortably damp. The air was hot, hitting our faces as we stepped into the dim space, only bright enough to see shadows and vague shapes. I fumbled for a light switch and was surprised when I actually found one. Click. Light flooded the room. "Hello!" a cheerful voice rang out. I think I screamed, or Matilda screamed, maybe both of us. We found Cheshire. He was as big as a bear, his skin piled up like a deflated balloon, both bloated and sagging. His body was attached to the wall, flesh merged with the wood in a bloody swirl. Every time he opened his mouth, a black, fat, flaccid tongue hung down to his navel. Cheshire was also completely naked. "Found me!" he shouted, jumping up and down, making his skin jiggle. "Cheshire?" Tilda asked. The creature jumped again. "That's right! Hello, friends! Hello, Walt! Hello, Matilda! Walt and Matilda, why are you so late?" His shouting made me immediately run toward the door, but of course, the door was gone. I hated that house. I hated it so much. "You're the last ones," Cheshire said. "Why don't you sit down?" I looked around the huge empty room. There was only one bed, as big as a swimming pool in the corner. The sheets were stained, covered in slime that looked very much like Cheshire's skin. I sat down on the floor. Matilda sat next to me. "Closer," Cheshire asked. We didn't move. "Fine, you found me. I made it as easy as possible, but it still took you a long time. The others are all gone, both Calvin and Violet. I thought you would go before them, but no. Calvin vanished in his smoke, and little Violet fell into the mirror. She always liked you, Walt." Cheshire turned to Matilda. "You saw them, didn't you? They visited you. But now they're all gone, and you two are the only ones left."
"What's going to happen to us?" Tilda asked. "You're going to change. You're going to become..." "Become what?" I asked. "What are we going to become?" Cheshire shrugged. At least I think he shrugged. The membranes of flesh around his shoulder rolled like waves hitting the shore. "I don't know what you'll become, just that you will become something. The eyes are the seeds, you see. You see, and once the seed is sown, there's no telling what will sprout, grow tall, and reach out. And when you have changed, you will have to leave this place." "Why?" Tilda pressed. "And go where?" "I don't know that either. The change will make this world uninhabitable. The air will become poison. The sunlight will be so heavy it will break bones. But you're lucky. There are many other worlds, and there are many, many wormholes between this world and others." Cheshire grinned, his tongue so long it nearly touched the ground. "There's a house with 100 doors that you can walk through forever without ever fully exploring. There's a night with no stars where the forgotten ones crawl home, and a clearing in the woods where the demons dance and lost children are planting trees. There is a place called Hell where the cowardly king awaits on his glass throne. And between it all, there's a neighborhood on a hill, slowly stuck in a crack of reality. Oh, you can go to those places, and in time, perhaps you will learn to come here, learn to cross back and forth, and how to find things desperately, how to nourish your soul." "Your words mean nothing," Tilda said. "Why me? Why did you do this to me?" "Because you were there, because you wanted something from us, because you accepted a gift, and now we are giving you more. Haven't you felt the calling? The doors all have a pull for those who can see them."
I thought about the tall tree with the floating blue lights in the sky, how it pulled us in, and how much Tilda wanted to see it. If we came across something similar, could we stay away? Tilda stood up. Enough. I'm tired of his rambling. He's going to tell me how to stop what's happening to me. I'm going to make him hurt until he tells me. I promise I will make him hurt. Cheshire smiled. Then he kept smiling until his mouth stretched so wide his face split in half. Something hairy crawled out of the opening. It was a skull with the spinal column attached, all bone covered in thick black fur. "See you on the other side," the skull said in Cheshire's voice. It crawled down the mountains of sagging flesh that was once his body, then darted across the floor, too fast to follow. Tilda lunged to catch it, but Cheshire slipped through a crack between the wall and the floor. He vanished. "God," I said. There was nothing else to say. Tilda punched the ground. "Damn it! Damn it! You dog!" Cheshire's flesh slowly dripped onto the floor, sliding off the wall like yogurt. It smelled of rotting meat, and for some reason, strawberries. Behind the pile of flesh was a door. With no other choice, we walked through and found ourselves standing outside Cheshire's house on the porch. The storm had stopped, and the sky was a perfect April blue. "Now what?" I asked. "Maybe we can follow his trail. Maybe we can—" Tilda silently walked across the yard and toward the RV. For a moment, I followed. When I got inside, she was already in the bedroom and had closed the door. The door was locked. "Matilda!" I called. She didn't answer. I heard her crying. I wondered what it sounded like to cry without eyes. Would tears still fall? I sat on the small sofa in the RV's kitchen and waited. 20 minutes later, Tilda came out, calm and pale, sunglasses on. "Shall we see the ball of yarn?" she asked. "All right," I said, standing up to start the RV. "That sounds like a fun drive." We weren't in a hurry. We drove slowly, exploring random exits, stopping frequently to walk around. Both of us were slowly falling apart. Matilda's fingers and toes were fusing together. Every day I found patches of her hair in the shower, along with her teeth. She was always bundled up, shivering even when it was hot, and always out of breath. My veins continued to darken, hardening, pressing against the skin that was now rough as tree bark. But it wasn't all bad. We still had fun times even then, sleeping until noon, staying up until dawn, always together. Every day we saw more strange creatures, vultures with antlers and human eyes, clouds that dragged their tails across the ground. And we saw the doors. Or more often, I think we felt them. Cheshire was right. They called to us, pulled at us. Tilda felt them more clearly than I did. One night we were driving past a hospital when Matilda grabbed the steering wheel, trying to steer the car into the parking lot. I wrestled the wheel back and slammed the gas. When the building was out of sight, Tilda finally calmed. She said, "I'm in pain. I don't think we can stay here, but I'm afraid to leave." "We'll be fine," I lied. "We'll figure out how to fix things." Last night we slept at a rest stop near the woods. When I woke up in the morning, Matilda was gone. I easily followed her trail, bloody footprints leading into the forest. Before long, I came across her clothes, her hair, and all her fingernails and toenails. The horrific journey led me to the edge of a small, still lake. The water was ice cold and reflected my own decaying image. That's when I felt the pull. The lake was a door, a place where the boundaries of reality were torn, a gateway to another world. I suspected the lake wasn't deep, but I felt like I was standing on the brink of a terrible abyss. If I stepped into the water, I knew I would sink until the light vanished, and then sink even deeper. I wondered what waited on the other side, what things could live in that darkness and pressure. And most of all, I wondered if I would ever see Matilda again. Another pull came, too strong, an undercurrent trying to drag me down. I panicked and stumbled, scrambling away from the lake as fast as I could. That door was not the door for me. I drove away from the rest stop. Even in that short distance, I already felt other doors calling to me. If I stay here too long, I know I will die. But if I leave, I might never be able to come back. And who knows what I'll step into when I pass through the doors that whispered to me, promising, pleading, and threatening. There are endless fields, alien stars, deep holes, eyes, and hungry things waiting. I won't be able to resist for much longer, and I'm afraid of this inevitable feeling. But I am absolutely determined to see that giant ball of yarn, if it's the last thing I do. I just wish I didn't have to do it alone. I'm so tired. I miss Matilda.